Since I've been streaming a fair amount of Dota Underlords as of late, I'm getting viewers that are either new to the game or are just picking it up for the first time, and one of the things that I'm kind of surprised that they either don't know right away or that they kind of pick up late is the fact that the heroes that are offered to you all come from a single shared pool. So I wanted to make a quick video to discuss how the shared pool works and what kind of knowledge that provides to you when you're playing the game. So if you're not familiar, all of the heroes that are offered to you in the shop are all coming from a single shared pool. That means that if I buy a unit, it comes out of the pool, and that's one less unit that my opponents can also purchase. Now, the amount of heroes that are in the shared pool is also dependent on the tier of the hero. So in Dota Underlords, there are 5 tiers of heroes, tiers 1 through 5, and tier 1 units have the most heroes available. So they have 45 heroes per hero in the tier 1. What that means is that when the game starts, for example, there are 45 tusks that exist in the pool. Now, as you go up in tier, the amount starts to go lower, and I'm going to put a graphic up on the screen now that kind of demonstrates this, right? So tier 1, there are 45 of each of the heroes. Tier 2, there are 30 of each of the heroes. Tier 3, there are 25. Tier 4, there are only 15. And Tier 5, those legendary late game heroes, there are only 10 in the pool. So what does that mean? Well, for starters, it means that you can only ever see a 3-star legendary Tier 5 unit once, because there are 10 heroes, and it takes 9 copies of a hero to 3-star a unit. So if somebody has a 3-star, that means there's only 1 left in the pool. That means they got 90% of the total pool in order to pull that off. That's also why it's very rare. You just don't see it very often. Outside of, the occasional screenshot on Reddit or something, you just don't see legendary heroes get 3-starred. But what this also means is that you can use this knowledge to your advantage in terms of heroes that you are going to chase. For example, somebody 3-stars a tier 1 unit, it's probably not that big of a deal. You can continue to pursue that hero and feel confident you can find them because they've taken essentially 9 out of the total pool, and that means that there are still plenty available for you to 2-star or even 3-star the same unit. Now, obviously, the more heroes that come out of the pool, the less likely that becomes. So one of the things that you can do is you can pay attention to the scoreboard. Especially like early on in the game, it's something that I like to pay attention to anyway, just to kind of see what builds people are going or what units they're picking. But you can pay attention to the scoreboard, and if you see that you have tiny, but everybody else is picking tiny, if you see right in the early game that there's 4 people with a 2-star tiny, or even if there's just a couple of 2-star tinies, but a lot of other people have purchased tiny or it's sitting on the bench, you might decide to not continue chasing tiny into the late game, right? Because in Dota Underlords, it's pretty common for you to get somewhere between like 1 and 3-star units by the end of the game, but you kind of have to choose your path on which ones to chase, and part of that is just taking what the shop gives you, and part of that is also paying attention to what other players have purchased. So you can keep that in mind by watching the scoreboard. It gets to be far more important when you start talking about tier 3 and then even more so tier 4 and tier 5 units, because again, with tier 5 there's only 10 heroes, with tier 4 there are only 15. So if you really want to build Medusa but you see that 2 of your opponents already have a 2-star Medusa, well, that's a minimum of 6 out of the pool, right? So that means there's only 9 Medusas left in the entire pool. You'll have to find 6 of them yourself if you want to get a 2-star. The odds of that are not very great, so sometimes that will influence your decision making. It is something that you will definitely want to pay attention to. Now, another thing about the pool, because this is the natural follow-up question, is well, what impacts the pool in terms of, do heroes go back? So yes, it's a shared pool. If a player sells a unit, so if it's on your bench, it's out of the pool, and you can actually use that in the late game to your advantage, where sometimes you can buy units. If you know that your opponent, if you're down to like you know, there's 3 players left, or even if you're in the heads up one-on-one phase and you know your opponent has a 1-star, say Medusa or Kunkka or something, and you see that show up in your shop, you can purchase it to try to deny them from getting to the 2-star version. So that is something to pay attention to. But units, when they're on your bench, are out of the pool, but if you sell a unit, it goes back to the pool. Also, if a player is eliminated, all of their units go back into the pool. So sometimes, for example, if you see somebody chasing the same units as you, but you have a lot of health left and they're about to be eliminated, it doesn't necessarily mean you need to abandon your units. You might just have to wait till that player is eliminated and then start trying to re-roll to find those units. So that is another thing to kind of pay attention to, is what the other players have and what's going to go back into the pool when those players are eliminated. Now, another thing to kind of keep track of is the percent chances that said units are going to show up in your shop. So another thing that players may not realize is that when you are paying attention to the shop, each level, meaning each character level, the chances of certain units showing up changes. It's dynamic, and I'm gonna put up real quickly here kind of like a grid that will explain this, but essentially as your player level increases, the chances of higher tiered units goes up, but that also means that the chances of lower tiered units goes down as far as appearing in your shop. So some key tiers to remember, right? Very first level of the game, you can only ever get offered tier 1 units. That's always just what happens. At level 2, that's the soonest that tier 2 can start showing up. Doesn't mean you'll see one, but that's when they become available. Similarly, at level 3, that's the soonest that tier 3 units can show up. Doesn't mean you'll be offered one right away, but that's the soonest they become available in the shop. The next, like, threshold, if you will, is level 5. That's the soonest that tier 4 units can start showing up. And then the final threshold is level 8, and that is the soonest that you'll start seeing legendaries. Granted, it's only a 1% chance, but if you know that you need to start getting access to legendaries, getting to level 8, and then you get a big jump in terms of probability, but when you go to level 9 and then again level 10, that impacts things. Now, the grid that I put up earlier actually showed 11 levels. That's kind of taking into account the higher class of criminal global item that you can pick up. That definitely makes a difference in the late game if you're trying to chase legendaries, for example. So keep that in mind. But understanding when you're trying to chase specific units to finish your 2 stars, finish your 3 stars, understanding your percent chances of what's going to be in the shop is important, because that might mean sometimes that you actually want to delay leveling up. If you're sitting on, you know, a tier 1 unit that you need 1 more of to finish your 3-star, you might want to hang out at a lower level for a bit longer and take some rerolls to finish it and then level up, because sometimes you'll level up and you'll hit level 10 and then you never find that 9th axe, for example. Why? Well, it's because your percentage went down because you leveled up. So keep that in mind. If you're not familiar, you can see your percentages when you mouse over your own character level. That's in the interface, for example. So I know I put that grid up earlier, but you can actually see what your current percentage is in the game as well. That is part of the UI, which is kind of nice. And yeah, it's just something that you want to pay attention to, because again, there's a shared pool, and you'll have a percent chance of, say, tier 1 units to show up, and then of those, you've got an equal distribution in terms of like what's in the pool for what's going to show up. So anyway, this is how the shop works. This is how the hero pool works. Again, it's one of those things that once it's explained, you kind of go, oh, okay, that makes total sense. But for new players specifically, they may not know there's a shared pool, or that your character level impacts what is available in the shop, for example. So hopefully this video helped you and gives you a little bit of insight into how it works. If you made it this far, thanks for watching, and I hope to catch you in the next video.